Welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Dutiful Son. Damon Reed stared at his father's gaunt face, the hospital machines beeping in a steady rhythm that seemed to count down the remaining moments of Douglas Reed's life. The cancer had ravaged the once powerful man, reducing him to a shadow. Damon had spent the past 3 months practically living at the hospital, much to the growing resentment of his wife, Natalie. "You need to sign these," Damon said softly, placing a folder of documents on the bedside table. "Dad, it's the transfer of the lake house to my name, like we discussed." Douglas's thin hand trembled as he reached for the pen. "That house, been in our family for generations. Your great-grandfather built it with his own hands. Belongs to a Reed." Damon nodded, helping steady his father's hand. "It'll stay with a Reed, I promise." It had been their sanctuary, the place where Douglas had taught Damon to fish, to build, to survive. After Damon's mother died when he was 12, the lake house became their healing place, where the broken remnants of their family could still feel whole. Douglas signed with effort, then locked eyes with his son. "Something I need to tell you. The safe at home, behind the painting in your study, I know," Damon said with a small smile. "No," Douglas wheezed. "Lake house. Basement panel. Code is your mother's birthday. Things you need to know." A coughing fit overtook him before he could continue. Damon's phone vibrated yet again. Natalie's 5th call in the past hour. He silenced it without looking. "Your wife, not happy?" Douglas asked between labored breaths. "She'll survive," Damon replied, his tone hardening slightly. "Some dinner with her sister and friends. I told her where I needed to be." Douglas's eyes clouded with something Damon couldn't interpret. Never liked the Keller women. Too much like their father. Damon didn't respond. The history between Douglas and Howard Keller, Natalie's father, was complicated. Former business partners whose relationship had soured dramatically years ago. "Promise me." Douglas suddenly gripped Damon's wrist with surprising strength. "Promise you'll be careful. Trust your instincts. Always told you, still waters run deep. Dad, save your strength. Promise me." The monitors began beeping more rapidly as Douglas's agitation grew. "I promise," Damon said soothingly, placing his hand over his father's. "I've always been careful." Douglas seemed to relax slightly. "Good boy. Your mother would be proud. Always said you got her brains and my spine." 2 days later, Douglas Reed passed away peacefully in his sleep, with Damon at his side. Natalie had called to say she couldn't make it. Something about her mother needing her. Damon barely registered her excuse, his grief a wall between him and everything else. In the quiet hospital room, as the nurses respectfully gave him space, Damon made a silent vow to honor his father's legacy. Little did he know how soon and severely that vow would be tested. That evening, as Damon returned to the empty house, he noticed Natalie had taken her expensive luggage, the matching set he'd bought for their 5th anniversary. Her closet was half empty, but nothing else seemed disturbed. She left a note saying she was staying with her parents to give him space to grieve. Damon found it strange, but was too emotionally drained to question it. He fell into a restless sleep in their king-sized bed, alone with his thoughts and memories. The next morning, his father's attorney, Preston Abernathy, called. "Damon, I'm deeply sorry for your loss. Your father was a good man," Preston said, his voice grave. "We need to discuss the will as soon as possible. There are matters that require immediate attention." "Can it wait until after the funeral?" Damon asked, rubbing his temples. "I'm afraid not," Preston replied firmly. Douglas was very specific about the timeline. "Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock at my office." When Damon arrived at the law office the following day, Preston looked uncomfortable. "Before we start, has anything unusual happened since your father's passing?" the lawyer asked. Damon frowned. "No, what?" Preston shuffled some papers. "Just checking. Now, let's discuss your father's estate." The meeting was brief, but puzzling. Douglas had changed his will just a month ago, designating specific items to be moved immediately to secure storage, including family heirlooms and documents. The bulk of his considerable estate went to Damon, with some charitable donations. He was very specific that certain items be secured right away, Preston explained. I've already arranged for the movers. They'll need access to your house today. That seems premature, Damon said, brow furrowing. Preston removed his glasses. Your father had his reasons, Damon. I suggest we respect them. By the time Damon returned home, the movers were already boxing up the items listed in the will: his father's antique watches, the family silver, several paintings, and, most importantly, a fireproof case containing family documents. As the last box was loaded, Damon caught a glimpse of Natalie's Audi turning the corner at the end of the street. She drove past slowly, not stopping. Something cold settled in Damon's stomach. Chapter 2. Empty Homecoming. The funeral was a blur of somber faces and meaningless platitudes. Damon stood stoically by his father's casket, accepting condolences from business associates, distant relatives, and family friends. Natalie was conspicuously absent, having texted that morning. Mom's having a panic attack. Can't make it. So sorry. Leo Dawson, Damon's childhood friend and business partner, stood beside him like a sentinel. Something's not right, Leo muttered as they watched another group of mourners approach. Natalie missing Douglas's funeral? After all he did for your business when you were starting out? Damon's jaw tightened. She and her family were never close to my father. No, Leo agreed, his eyes narrowing. But it's basic respect. After the service, as rain began to fall on the freshly covered grave, Damon knelt and placed his hand on the wet earth. I'll make you proud, he whispered. The cemetery had emptied when Damon noticed a woman standing under a distant oak tree, watching him. He recognized Olivia Keller, Natalie's younger sister, but she turned and hurried away when their eyes met. On the drive home, Damon tried calling Natalie again, straight to voicemail. His unease deepened. As Damon pulled into his driveway, exhaustion washing over him, he noticed the first alarming detail. The security cameras he'd installed last year were missing. The mounting brackets remained, but the devices were gone. He approached the front door, keys in hand, only to find a lock wouldn't turn. He tried again, thinking perhaps grief was making him clumsy. The key didn't fit. Damon stepped back, examining the door handle and deadbolt. Both were new, not the ones that had been there that morning. His phone chimed with a text. Natalie, we need space. We'll call to arrange pickup of your things. Please don't make this difficult. Damon stared at the message in disbelief, rage and confusion building inside him. He tried calling her immediately, voicemail again. He called her parents, no answer. He tried Olivia, straight to voicemail. Night was falling, and rain was coming down harder. Damon pounded on his own front door, then walked around the house, checking windows. All locked, curtains drawn. Through a gap, he could see movement inside, shadows of people walking around his home. He considered breaking in, but paused. Something in his father's voice echoed in his mind. Trust your instincts. Damon returned to his car and drove to a hotel. That night, he barely slept, his mind racing through possibilities, each more disturbing than the last. The next morning, Damon called a locksmith, explaining the situation as a domestic dispute. I can't let you in without proof of ownership, sir, the locksmith explained apologetically. Damon drove to the county clerk's office. 2 hours and several $100s later, he had certified copies of the deed to the house, solely in his name. His father had insisted on that when Damon and Natalie married, and despite her protests, Damon had agreed. Now he understood why. Armed with the documentation, Damon returned with the locksmith. As the man worked on the door, a police cruiser pulled up. 2 officers approached, looking between Damon and the locksmith. Sir, we received a call about an attempted break-in at this address. Damon felt a cold fury building. He remained composed as he showed them his identification and the property deed. This is my house, he explained. My wife changed the locks while I was at my father's funeral yesterday. The officers exchanged glances. The older one sighed. Domestic situation. Mr. Reed, you have proof of residence and ownership. You're within your rights to enter but I strongly suggest you have someone neutral present, given the circumstances. I'd like you both to stay, Damon said firmly. I want witnesses to whatever I find inside. The locksmith finished, and Damon pushed the door open, the police officers following. The house was eerily silent and empty. Room after room, Damon found barren spaces where furniture, electronics, and artwork had been. His clothes were gone from the closets. The kitchen had been stripped of everything but the built-in appliances. His home office, ransacked, computers missing, filing cabinets emptied. But the most devastating discovery awaited in what had been his father's study. The antique urn containing Douglas Reed's ashes, which Damon had placed carefully on the mantel before the funeral, was gone. They took my father's ashes, Damon said, his voice hollow. The officers documented everything, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Sir, we can file a report for theft, but with it being your wife. The younger officer started. I understand, Damon cut him off. He felt oddly calm now, a cold clarity settling over him. I'll handle this through legal channels. After the police left, Damon sat alone on the floor of his emptied bedroom, pulling up Olivia's contact. This time, she answered. What do you want? Her voice was defensive but tinged with guilt. Where is she, Olivia? Look, Damon, this isn't personal. She took my father's ashes. Damon interrupted, his voice dangerously quiet. You want to tell me how that's not personal? Silence stretched between them. Finally, Olivia sighed. You should have signed the house over when we asked. This could have been civilized. The pieces suddenly clicked together. Natalie's absence during his father's illness, the strange meeting with Preston, the items his father had insisted on moving to storage. Your family planned this, Damon said, the realization burning through him. How long? How long were you planning to wait until my father died to pull this? You Reeds took enough from our family. Olivia snapped. Dad nearly drank himself to death after your father pushed him out of their company. 20 years of watching your family prosper while ours. So that's what this is about. Howard's grudge. Damon's laugh was cold. And Natalie? Was she in on this from the beginning? Was our entire marriage a setup? Olivia's silence was answer enough. Tell your sister she made one critical mistake, Damon said quietly. What's that? Olivia's voice held a note of uncertainty. She left me with nothing to lose. Damon hung up and immediately dialed Preston Abernathy's number. Chapter 3, Hidden Truths. We have a meeting tomorrow at 9. Preston confirmed after Damon explained the situation. Bring everything you've documented so far. There's something else, Damon said. My father mentioned a safe at the lake house. Did he ever discuss that with you? A pause. No, but I'm not surprised. Douglas was cautious, especially about the Kellers. Damon ended the call and drove directly to the lake house. The one property safely in his name. The one place Natalie couldn't touch. As he turned onto the private road leading to the secluded property, he noticed tire tracks in the muddy shoulder, recent ones. Someone had been here. The lake house appeared undisturbed, but Damon approached cautiously. The spare key was still hidden under the false rock by the back porch. Inside, he moved silently through the familiar space, checking each room. Nothing seemed out of place until he reached his father's small study. The desk drawers had been rifled through, papers scattered. Someone had been searching for something. Damon headed to the basement. Behind a wood panel, just as his father had described, he found the safe. Using his mother's birth date, he opened it easily. Inside was a sealed envelope labeled for Damon. When the time comes, a USB drive, a small recording device, and several folders of documents. He opened the envelope first. His father's distinctive handwriting filled the page. Damon, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and my suspicions were correct. The Kellers never forgave what happened between Howard and me. What you don't know is that Howard tried to embezzle from our company. I had proof, but chose not to press charges for the sake of his family. Instead, I bought him out, saved him from prison. He's twisted that mercy into a grievance over the years. I never trusted your marriage to Natalie. The timing was too convenient, right when Reed Technologies secured the government contract. I've had you and your assets monitored discreetly. On the USB drive, you'll find surveillance footage, financial records, and private investigator reports. Natalie has been working with her family to position herself to take everything when I died. I suspect Vincent Blackwell is involved, Howard's nephew and their family lawyer. Most importantly, you'll find a recording of your wedding day. Before the ceremony, I had a conversation with Natalie. I was wearing a wire. What she didn't know is that I also had papers drawn up, a real prenuptial agreement, which she signed thinking it was just a change to the wedding venue contract. Preston has the original. I couldn't tell you my suspicions without proof. You loved her, and I couldn't take that from you without certainty. Now, I fear you have that certainty. Remember what I always taught you. In chess, the player who sees 3 moves ahead usually wins. See 10 moves ahead, and you'll never lose. Your loving father, Douglas. Damon's hands shook as he plugged the USB drive into his laptop. Hours passed as he reviewed the contents. Photos of Natalie meeting secretly with Vincent, bank statements showing large transfers from Keller accounts coinciding with key moments in Damon's business. And most damning, emails between Natalie and her family discussing their long game. The audio recording was the final piece. His father's voice, followed by Natalie's. Douglas, before you marry my son, I want to be clear about something. Natalie, what's that, Douglas? Douglas, I know what your family is planning. Howard isn't as clever as he thinks. A moment of silence, then Natalie's laugh, cold, nothing like the warm sound Damon had fallen in love with. Natalie, and what exactly do you think we're planning? Douglas, to take everything from my son once I'm gone. To use him to get back what Howard believes I stole. Natalie, you did steal it. You destroyed my father. Douglas, I saved him from prison. He was embezzling for years. Natalie, that's your version. Here's mine. I'm going to marry Damon. I'm going to make him fall so deeply in love with me that he won't see what's happening until it's too late. And then, when your precious empire is finally in Keller hands, I'll tell him exactly why his world collapsed. Douglas, you won't succeed. Natalie, I already have. These contracts for the venue change? I've already signed them. In 2 hours, I'll be Mrs. Reed, and there's nothing you can do about it without breaking your son's heart. Douglas, these aren't venue contracts. This is a prenuptial agreement, which you've just signed, witnessed by my attorney. You get nothing if the marriage ends, for any reason. You've outplayed yourself, Natalie. The sound of papers being grabbed, Natalie's furious breathing. Natalie, you're lying. Douglas, page 3, paragraph 4. I'd suggest reading the fine print before signing next time. A string of curses from Natalie. Douglas, now you have a choice. Walk away now, or go through with the wedding knowing you'll never get what you came for. Natalie, after a long pause, he loves me. That's still worth something. I can work with that. Douglas, then understand this. If you hurt my son, there won't be a place on this earth where you can hide from what follows. Dawn was breaking as Damon finally gathered all the evidence and locked the safe. His phone had dozens of missed calls, mostly from Leo, a few from Preston. As he drove back toward the city, Damon's mind was crystallizing around a plan. The cold rage that had built inside him was now transforming into something more dangerous, calculated purpose. His father had given him the weapons to fight back. Now Damon would use them not just to defend himself, but to systematically dismantle everyone who had betrayed him. By the time he reached Preston's office, Damon Reed was no longer the grieving son or the betrayed husband. He had become something else entirely, the architect of a retribution that would leave nothing but ashes in its wake. Chapter 4, The Spider's Web. Preston Abernathy's office was immaculate, all dark wood and leather-bound law books. A place where family legacies were protected or destroyed with the stroke of a pen. The elderly attorney watched with steepled fingers as Damon methodically laid out everything he had discovered. Your father was a brilliant man, Preston said when Damon finished. He knew something like this might happen, which is why he had me prepare this. He slid a thick folder across the desk. The prenuptial agreement Natalie unknowingly signed. Damon opened it, scanning the document. This is ironclad. Completely. Moreover, Douglas established a trust that technically owns most of Reed Technologies' assets. A trust that becomes irrevocable upon his death, with you as the sole beneficiary. Preston allowed himself a small smile. The Kellers can't touch the company or its holdings. What about the house? My personal accounts. Preston's expression tightened. That's more complicated. Technically, the house is yours alone, but any items purchased during your marriage could be considered marital property. As for your accounts, we've confirmed unauthorized transfers totaling nearly $2 million over the past 3 months. She emptied our accounts, Damon said, unsurprised. Not entirely. She left just enough to avoid triggering the fraud alerts. But this is about more than money, isn't it? Damon nodded. My father's ashes. Family heirlooms. Things that can't be replaced. We can file emergency motions today, Preston said. Get court orders to freeze assets, recover property. No, Damon interrupted. Not yet. Preston frowned. Damon, every day we wait gives them more rope, Damon finished. My father taught me to see 10 moves ahead. Filing legal motions now would alert them. I want to know exactly what they're planning before I make my move. After leaving Preston's office, Damon checked into a new hotel under a different name. He needed space to think, to plan. The prenup was his ace, but he wouldn't play it immediately. First, he needed to understand the full scope of the Keller scheme and who else was involved. His phone rang. Leo Dawson. Where the hell have you been? Leo demanded when Damon answered. I've been trying to reach you for days. Family emergency, Damon replied vaguely. I need to see you. Not at the office. Somewhere private. They agreed to meet at an old fishing cabin Leo owned outside the city. When Damon arrived, Leo was pacing nervously. Someone's been asking questions at Reed Technologies, Leo explained after they were settled. A lawyer named Vincent Blackwell. He claimed to represent you, wanted access to company financials, contracts, said you were taking time off after your father's death. And I told him to get proper documentation or get lost, Leo said. Something felt off. The guy seemed too eager. Good instinct, Damon said. Vincent Blackwell is Howard Keller's nephew, Natalie's cousin. Leo's eyes widened as Damon explained the situation. Jesus, Leo breathed when Damon finished. Your own wife. I don't even have words. I need to know if anyone inside the company is working with them, Damon said. Can you keep an eye on things? Report anything suspicious, but don't let on that you know anything's wrong. Leo nodded firmly. You can count on me. But what are you going to do? Gather intelligence. Map the network. Identify vulnerabilities. Damon's voice was cold, methodical. Then dismantle it piece by piece. Over the next week, Damon operated from the shadows. He hired a private investigator who set up surveillance on Natalie, Vincent, and key members of the Keller family. He had his bank accounts examined for patterns in the unauthorized withdrawals. He even tracked down the moving company that had emptied his house. The picture that emerged was troubling. Natalie had been methodically transferring funds for months, small amounts that wouldn't raise flags. The movers had been told Damon was aware of the move, that he and Natalie were selling the house quickly due to his father's estate issues. Most disturbing, Vincent had been making inquiries about Reed Technologies' intellectual property, particularly patents developed under Douglas Reed's leadership. Damon took the information to Preston, who looked grim. They're after the legacy patents, the lawyer said. The ones that still generate millions in licensing fees. If they could somehow claim partial ownership through Natalie. Could they succeed? Not with the prenup and trust structures Douglas established, but without those. Preston shook his head. They could have tied you up in litigation for years. Forced a settlement. Damon nodded, another piece of the puzzle clicking into place. Any news on my father's ashes? Nothing yet, Preston admitted. But I've engaged a forensic accounting firm to trace all movement of assets. If anything was sold or transferred to a third party, we'll find it. That evening, as Damon reviewed surveillance photos in his hotel room, his phone rang with an unknown number. Cautiously, he answered. Hello, Damon. The smooth, confident voice belonged to Vincent Blackwell. I believe we should talk. About what? Damon kept his tone neutral, betraying nothing. About a situation that's become unnecessarily complicated. I represent Natalie in your separation. She's willing to be reasonable, return certain items of sentimental value, including your father's remains, in exchange for an equitable division of assets. Equitable, Damon repeated. Such as the lake house property, a 40% stake in Reed Technologies, a fair cash settlement. Vincent's voice was practiced, reasonable. In return, Natalie will facilitate the return of personal items, agree to an expedited divorce, and sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding certain sensitive family matters. Blackmail, Vincent? That seems beneath a lawyer of your standing. A chuckle. Not blackmail. Negotiation. Natalie has information that could be damaging to the Reed family reputation. Information your father went to great lengths to conceal. I'll need time to consider, Damon said, mind racing. What information was Vincent referring to? Was it a bluff? Or did they actually have something? Of course. We're prepared to give you 48 hours. After that, our settlement terms become significantly less generous. Vincent paused. Oh, and Damon, don't bother with emergency court filings. Judge Trevino is an old family friend of the Kellers. Any motions would face unfortunate delays. After Vincent hung up, Damon immediately called Preston. They're claiming to have damaging information about my father, he explained. Something he supposedly concealed. Any idea what that might be? Preston was silent for several heartbeats. There is something, but I don't see how they could know. The records were sealed decades ago. Tell me, before your father met your mother, he was briefly married to Howard Keller's sister, Mary Ann. The marriage ended badly. She accused Douglas of abuse, claims that were later proven false when evidence emerged that she had self-inflicted her injuries. My father was married before. Damon couldn't hide his shock. He never mentioned it. It was deeply painful for him. Mary Ann had significant mental health issues that emerged during their brief marriage. When the truth came out, she took her own life. Howard blamed Douglas, claimed he drove her to it. The court records were sealed to protect both families. Damon struggled to process this revelation. And you think this is what they're threatening to expose? Possibly. But again, those records were sealed by judicial order. Unless. Preston trailed off. Unless what? Unless Howard Keller kept his own documentation. Letters, photos, perhaps even recordings. If he twisted the narrative, presented a false version of events. It could damage my father's reputation posthumously, Damon finished. And by extension, potentially affect Reed Technologies' public standing. Exactly. Damon thanked Preston and ended the call, his mind now working on multiple levels. The Kellers were playing a deeper game than he had initially thought. They weren't just after money. They wanted to destroy Douglas Reed's legacy completely. As he stared at the surveillance photos spread across the hotel bed, Natalie smiling at Vincent in ways she never had with Damon, Olivia meeting with someone who appeared to be Judge Trevino, Howard Keller looking frail but determined, Damon began to formulate a counter-strategy that would turn their own tactics against them. They had tried to leave him with nothing. Instead, they had freed him from every constraint, every moral limitation that might have held him back. Now he would show them exactly what a man with nothing to lose was capable of. Chapter 5. Shadows and Reflections. The exclusive Sullivan Steakhouse was dimly lit, perfect for the conversation Damon planned to have. Across from him sat Curtis Sullivan, the restaurant's owner and an old friend of Douglas Reed. Curtis had called Damon unexpectedly, asking to meet, saying only that it concerned family matters. Your father kept a table here every Friday for 20 years, Curtis said after they ordered. Last time I saw him, he gave me something to hold for you. Said you'd come asking eventually. He slid a small key across the table. Private vault in our wine cellar. Whatever's inside is yours. After dinner, Curtis personally led Damon to the restaurant's impressive wine cellar, then to a back room containing several private lockboxes for the establishment's wealthiest patrons. The key opened vault number 7. Inside was a leather-bound journal and a flash drive labeled Mary Ann. A note in his father's handwriting read, "The truth in her own words. Use only if necessary." Later that night, in his hotel room, Damon opened the journal. It contained entries dating back 30 years, written by Mary Ann Keller herself. The The disturbing contents revealed a deeply troubled woman obsessed with Douglas, who had ended their relationship after discovering her increasingly erratic behavior. The entries documented her deliberate self-harm, her plans to frame Douglas, and most disturbingly, Howard's encouragement of her delusions. The flash drive contained audio recordings, Marianne's therapy sessions, which she had apparently recorded secretly. In them, she admitted to fabricating the abuse allegations, described Howard's manipulation, and expressed remorse for the damage she had caused. How did my father get these? Damon wondered aloud. The last journal entry provided the answer. Douglas came to see me today at the facility. I gave him everything, the journals, the recordings. He deserved to protect himself from Howard. My brother will never stop until he destroys Douglas completely. I've enabled his vendetta for too long. This is my atonement. Marianne. The entry was dated 2 weeks before her suicide. Armed with this new information, Damon began connecting more dots. Howard's decades-long grudge, the orchestrated marriage between Damon and Natalie, the plan to wait until Douglas died before striking. It was all part of vendetta that had consumed the Keller family for a generation. The next morning, Damon received a text from Leo. Need to meet. Important. Same place, noon. When Damon arrived at the fishing cabin, Leo was already there, looking agitated. Someone tried to access our secure servers last night, Leo explained. The cybersecurity team caught it in time, but it was sophisticated, they almost got through. And get this, the attack originated from a law firm's network, Blackwell and Associates. Vincent, Damon said, unsurprised. They're getting desperate. What were they trying to access? The patent documentation for the quantum encryption protocol, your father's most valuable innovation. Damon nodded thoughtfully. That protocol is licensed to half the financial institutions in the country. If they could claim partial ownership, they'd control the most valuable intellectual property Reed Technologies ever developed, Leo finished. I've reinforced security, but they'll try again. Let them, Damon said, a plan forming. In fact, create a vulnerability, something that looks accidental. When they break in, feed them altered documents, convincing enough to pass a cursory inspection, but with subtle flaws that would invalidate any legal claim. Leo stared at him. That's devious, but it could work. Set it up. And Leo, make it convincing. They need to believe they've won. After Leo left, Damon drove to a small diner on the outskirts of town. The same diner where, according to surveillance, Natalie met regularly with someone who wasn't Vincent or any known Keller family member. He arrived early, choosing a booth with a clear view of the entrance, but partially obscured by a partition. At precisely 2:15 p.m., Natalie walked in, impeccably dressed as always. She took a booth near the back, ordered coffee, and waited. 10 minutes later, a man in his 50s joined her, silver-haired, expensive suit, confident bearing. Damon recognized him immediately. Senator William Foster, chairman of the Defense Appropriations Committee and a key figure in government contract for cybersecurity. Through his Zoom lens, Damon captured their entire conversation. The exchange of documents, the familiar way Foster touched Natalie's hand, the moment she leaned in to whisper something that made the senator laugh. Another piece of the puzzle fell into place. Foster had been instrumental in awarding Reed Technologies several lucrative government contracts. If he was working with the Kellers, Damon's phone vibrated. A text from Preston. Emergency. Call immediately. Stepping outside, Damon called his lawyer. The forensic accountants found something. Preston said without preamble. There's a safety deposit box at First National Bank, opened in Natalie's name 3 months ago. Box contents were insured for $2 million. My father's ashes, Damon said, suddenly certain. Likely, along with other irreplaceable items. We could get a court order to open it, but not through Judge Trevino. I'll need to file in federal court, cite interstate commerce violations since some of the items cross state lines. Do what Damon authorized, but wait until tomorrow afternoon. I need time for one more piece to fall into place. That evening, Damon reviewed everything he had gathered. The evidence of the Kellers' conspiracy, Marianne's journal and recordings, photographs of Natalie with Senator Foster, and the location of his father's ashes. He also had the prenup, his ultimate trump card. But simply countering their moves wasn't enough. Damon wanted more than defense. He wanted complete victory. He wanted them to feel the same devastating loss they had tried to inflict on him. His phone rang. Vincent Blackwell again. "Your 48 hours are up, Damon. What's your answer?" "I need to see Natalie," Damon replied. "Face to face. No lawyers, no family members. Just the two of us." Vincent hesitated. "That's not advisable at this stage." "It's non-negotiable," Damon cut in. "I'll sign nothing, agree to nothing, until I speak with my wife directly." After a long pause, Vincent relented. "Fine. Tomorrow noon. There's a conference room at my office." "No. Neutral ground. The Botanical Garden. Japanese Pavilion. 1 o'clock. "I'll relay your terms," Vincent said stiffly. After hanging up, Damon made one final call to a private number he had obtained through Preston's connections. The call lasted less than 5 minutes, but by the end, Damon had secured a powerful ally in his counteroffensive. As midnight approached, Damon stood at the window of his hotel room, looking out at the city lights. Tomorrow would be the turning point, the moment when the hunters realized they had become the prey. Chapter 6. The Turning Tide. The Japanese pavilion at the Botanical Garden was deserted when Damon arrived, exactly as he had planned. He had called ahead, rented the space for a private meditation session, ensuring no witnesses to what would transpire. Natalie arrived 15 minutes late, a calculated power move. She was stunning as always, designer dress, perfect makeup, not a platinum blonde hair out of place. But Damon now saw through the facade to the coldness beneath. "You look terrible," she said by way of greeting, noting his unshaven face and the dark circles under his eyes. "Grief doesn't suit you. Neither does betrayal," Damon replied evenly. "But at least my condition is temporary." Natalie sat across from him, crossing her legs elegantly. "Let's not waste time." Vincent conveyed our terms. "They're more than fair, considering." "Considering what?" Damon asked. "That you married me under false pretenses? That you and your family planned to strip me of everything the moment my father died? That you stole his ashes as leverage?" A flash of surprise crossed her face, quickly masked. "You always were smarter than we gave you credit for." "Not smart enough to see through you from the beginning," Damon admitted. "That was my mistake. One I won't repeat." Natalie leaned forward. "Here's the reality, Damon. You can fight this, drag it through the courts for years, drain your resources, damage Reed Technologies' reputation irreparably. Or you can accept our terms and walk away with your dignity and half your fortune intact. Those are my only options." Damon asked mildly. "The reasonable ones, yes." Damon nodded slowly, then reached into his jacket and placed a small digital recorder on the table. "Then allow me to present a third alternative." He pressed play. Natalie's voice filled the pavilion. "He has no idea. Douglas is finally dying, and once he's gone, we move. Damon trusts me completely. He'll never see it coming." Vincent's voice responded. "The timing has to be perfect. We can't move before the old man is buried." Natalie's expression hardened as her own plotting played back to her. Damon stopped the recording. "I have hours of these. You, Vincent, your father, Olivia, all discussing your grand scheme in explicit detail." Damon's voice remained conversational, quite damning in a court of law, or the court of public opinion. "You're bluffing," Natalie said, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. "Am I?" Damon placed his phone on the table, turned it to show a screen displaying a security camera feed. Natalie entering the safety deposit box at First National Bank, removing an ornate urn. "That's federal wire fraud, by the way. Crossing state lines with stolen property." For the first time, fear flickered across Natalie's perfect features. "What do you want?" "I'm so glad you asked." Damon smiled coldly. "First, my father's ashes and all family heirlooms returned today. Second, you sign a confession detailing the entire conspiracy, naming everyone involved. Third, you renounce all claims to any Reed assets, properties, or businesses." Natalie scoffed. "You're delusional." "I would never." "I'm not finished," Damon continued calmly. "In return, I don't release the recordings to the FBI's white-collar crime division. I don't submit evidence of Senator Foster's corruption to the Ethics Committee. And I don't publish Mary Ann's journal detailing how she and Howard fabricated the abuse allegations against my father. All color drained from Natalie's face at the mention of Mary Ann. That's impossible. Those records were destroyed. Apparently not. Mary Ann gave everything to my father before she died. Her confession, the recordings of her therapy sessions where she admitted to self-harm and false accusations. Howard's role in encouraging her delusions. Damon watched the realization dawning in Natalie's eyes. Your family built their vendetta on a foundation of lies. Natalie's composure cracked. You can't prove any of this. I don't need to prove it all. Just enough to start an investigation. The FBI is particularly interested in Senator Foster's involvement. Did you know he's under preliminary investigation for accepting bribes? Your meetings with him couldn't have come at a worse time. Damon stood, buttoning his jacket casually. You have until 5 o'clock today to return my father's ashes and the family heirlooms. Until noon tomorrow to deliver the signed confession. By Monday, I want the divorce papers filed, with you making no claims on my assets. And if I refuse? Natalie's voice was barely a whisper. Then I burn everything to the ground, Damon said simply. Your family's reputation, their businesses, their freedom. Howard will likely die in prison. Vincent will be disbarred. You'll face federal charges. And I'll make sure everyone knows exactly why. That it all stemmed from a lie Howard Keller perpetuated for 30 years. As he turned to leave, Natalie called after him. Damon, you loved me once. Does that mean nothing? Damon paused, looking back at the woman he had once built his life around. I love who I thought you were. That person never existed. He gestured to the recorder. Keep it. A souvenir of your greatest performance. By 4:30 that afternoon, a courier delivered a package to Damon's hotel. The urn containing his father's ashes, along with several boxes of family heirlooms. A note from Vincent requested a 48-hour extension for the confession, offering additional concessions in exchange. Damon denied the extension with a one-word text. No. That evening, Leo called with news. They took the bait. Someone accessed the dummy server, downloaded the altered patent documents. We traced it to Blackwell's home network. Perfect, Damon replied. Now we wait. The next morning, Preston arrived at Damon's hotel with a large envelope. It was delivered to my office an hour ago. Natalie's full confession, notarized. Names everyone involved. Howard, Vincent, Olivia, even Senator Foster's role. And the divorce papers? Filed first thing this morning. She's making no claims on any assets. Damon nodded, satisfied but not yet finished. What about Judge Trevino? Implicated in the confession. I've already forwarded a copy to the Judicial Ethics Committee. Preston studied Damon carefully. They've capitulated completely. It's more than we hoped for. It's exactly what I planned for, Damon corrected. But we're not done. Preston frowned. What more is there? You've won, Damon. You've protected your father's legacy, secured your assets, exposed their conspiracy. Justice has been served. Justice. Damon smiled without warmth. This isn't about justice, Preston. This is about consequences. Later that day, Damon visited his emptied house, now being restored with his recovered possessions. In his father's study, he carefully placed the urn on the mantel. I kept my promise, he told the urn softly. The house stays with a reed. Tomorrow would bring the final phase of his plan, the complete dismantling of the Keller family's world. Not through violence or illegal means, but through the careful application of truth, power, and calculated retribution. As night fell, Damon sat alone in the study, his father's chess set before him. He moved a piece, not the beginning of a game, but the penultimate move in one long played. Checkmate in one, he murmured. Chapter 7. First Blood. The headquarters of Keller Financial Group occupied 3 floors of a downtown high-rise, the last remaining testament to Howard Keller's former success. Despite years of declining fortunes, the elder Keller had maintained the impressive offices, a facade of prosperity covering increasingly desperate circumstances. At precisely 9 a.m., Damon Reed walked through the front doors alone, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit. The receptionist's eyes widened in recognition. Mr. Reed, Do you have an appointment? No, Damon replied pleasantly. But Howard is expecting me. Family matter. Before she could respond, Damon was already moving toward the executive elevator, security badge in hand. Natalie's badge, which he had forgotten to retrieve from their home in her haste to empty it. Howard Keller was on the phone when Damon entered his corner office unannounced. The older man's face contorted with shock and anger. "I'll call back," Howard said abruptly, slamming down the receiver. "What did you get in here?" "Your security needs improvement," Damon replied, settling comfortably into a chair opposite Howard's desk. "But then, most things about your operation do." Howard reached for his desk phone. "I'm calling security." "Before you do," Damon placed a folder on the desk. "You might want to look at this." Howard hesitated, then opened the folder. His face paled as he scanned the contents. "This is a copy of Natalie's confession," Damon explained unnecessarily. "The original is already with the FBI. By now, they're probably preparing search warrants for your offices, Vincent's law firm, and Senator Foster's residence." "You're bluffing," Howard said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Am I?" Damon gestured toward the window overlooking the street below. "Take a look." Howard struggled to his feet, moving to the window. On the street below, several black SUVs had pulled up. Men and women in FBI jackets were emerging, heading toward the building entrance. "That could be for anyone," Howard said weakly. "Possibly," Damon conceded, though the timing would be quite coincidental. Howard sank back into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 70 years. "What do you want, Damon?" "Want? Nothing. I already have everything I need." Damon leaned forward. "I'm here to offer you a chance your family never gave my father. The opportunity to know exactly who destroyed you and why." "Your father took everything from me," Howard snarled, a flash of the old hatred breaking through his fear. "No, Howard. You destroyed yourself when you built your life on a lie." Damon placed a second folder on the desk. Mary Ann's journal, her therapy recordings, the truth about what happened 30 years ago. Howard stared at the folder as if it might bite him. "Where? How did you get that?" "Marian gave everything to my father before she died. She wanted to make amends." Damon's voice hardened. "She was sick, Howard. She needed help, not encouragement in her delusions. My father tried to get her that help. You convinced her it was a betrayal. You don't understand." "Understand perfectly," Damon cut him off. "You couldn't accept that your sister was ill. It was easier to blame my father, to nurture a vendetta through fabricated grievances. And when that wasn't enough, you used your own daughter as a weapon in your personal war." Howard's intercom buzzed. The receptionist's voice was tense. "Mr. Keller, there are federal agents here with a search warrant." "Tell them I'll be right out," Howard replied, his voice hollow. Damon stood. "One last thing. Your company is leveraged to the breaking point. Most of your clients will leave when news of your arrest breaks. The value of Keller Financial Group will plummet." "You bastard," Howard whispered. "By this afternoon, Reed Acquisitions, a subsidiary I created last week, will offer to buy your company for 10 cents on the dollar. The board will accept. They'll have no choice. By tomorrow, the Keller name will be stripped from the building." Damon adjusted his cufflinks. "Your life's work will belong to a Reed, just as you once feared." As Damon turned to leave, Howard called after him. "This won't bring your father back." Damon paused at the door. "No, but it will ensure that when people remember Douglas Reed, they know the truth. When they remember Howard Keller, they'll know the truth as well." He nodded toward the approaching federal agents visible through the glass walls. "I believe your guests have arrived." From Howard's office, Damon went directly to the courthouse where Judge Raymond Trevino was presiding. He sat quietly in the back of the courtroom, waiting for the morning recess. When Trevino retired to his chambers, Damon followed, slipping past the bailiff by showing a Bar Association ID, Vincent's, borrowed from Natalie's personal effects. Judge Trevino looked up in alarm when Damon entered his chambers unannounced. "What is the meaning of this? How did you get in here?" "Hello, Judge," Damon said, closing the door behind him. "I thought we should discuss your relationship with the Keller family before the Judicial Ethics Committee does." Trevino's face hardened. "I don't know what you're talking about, but you're dangerously close to contempt." Damon placed a small USB drive on the judge's desk. This contains recorded conversations between you and Olivia Keller, discussing how you would handle emergency motions related to my divorce. It also contains bank records showing payment from Keller Holdings to an offshore account in your wife's maiden name. All color drained from Trevino's face. That's fabricated. Perhaps. Damon shrugged. But in about an hour, the Ethics Committee and the Attorney General's office will receive copies. I imagine they'll be very interested in investigating. He checked his watch. You have a decision to make, Raymond. Resign immediately, citing health concerns, or face a very public inquiry. You can't do this, Trevino whispered. I already have. Damon moved toward the door. Oh, and Judge, the committee will receive their copies regardless of your decision. The only thing you're choosing is whether you leave with a shred of dignity intact. By noon, Damon had received confirmation that Judge Trevino had announced his immediate retirement due to recently diagnosed health issues. Howard Keller was being processed on initial charges of conspiracy and wire fraud. Vincent Blackwell's law offices were being searched. Phase 1 was complete. Now for Olivia. Olivia Keller's art gallery catered to wealthy clients with more money than taste. When Damon entered, she was entertaining a potential buyer, gesturing dramatically at an abstract painting with an absurd price tag. Damon, she said coldly when she noticed him, quickly ushering her client toward another employee. You have some nerve showing up here. Considering what your family tried to do to me, I'd say my nerve is rather mild in comparison, Damon replied, glancing around the gallery. Nice place. Shame about the impending foreclosure. Olivia blanched. What are you talking about? Your gallery lease, your inventory financing, your personal mortgage. All through Meridian Bank, correct? At Olivia's stunned nod, Damon continued. Meridian was acquired this morning by a holding company that I happen to control. All high-risk loans are being called in immediately. You can't. I can and I have. By close of business, you'll receive formal notice. You have 30 days to repay in full or face eviction and asset seizure. Damon smiled thinly. Of course, with Howard being arrested and the family finances in disarray, I doubt you'll find the capital. Olivia's composure cracked. This is because of what I said on the phone, isn't it? About signing over the house. Partly, Damon acknowledged. But mostly it's because you helped plan the theft of my father's ashes. Because you knew what your family was doing and participated willingly. He looked directly into her eyes. Actions have consequences, Olivia. Unlike your family, I believe in delivering them personally. At 3 o'clock, Damon received a call from Preston. Senator Foster just announced he won't seek re-election, citing family reasons. Sources in his office say he's cooperating with federal authorities. As expected, Damon said. And Vincent, barricaded in his home, refusing to surrender to federal marshals. It's turning into a media circus. Perfect. By evening, the pieces had fallen exactly as Damon had planned. Howard Keller was in federal custody. Judge Trevino had retired in disgrace. Olivia's financial ruin was set in motion. Senator Foster was cooperating with authorities in exchange for leniency. Vincent was self-destructing in the most public way possible. Only one person remained, Natalie. Chapter 8. The Queen's Gambit. The gates of the Keller family estate stood open when Damon arrived, an unusual sight for the normally security-conscious compound. As he drove up the winding driveway, he passed several vehicles hastily packed with luggage and valuables. The family staff was fleeing the sinking ship. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the usual immaculate order had given way to chaos. Drawers left open, valuable items missing from their displays, papers scattered. Damon found Natalie in the sunroom, a glass of scotch in her hand, staring out at the perfectly manicured gardens. She didn't turn when he entered. How did you do it? She asked, her voice strangely calm. How did you dismantle everything so quickly, so completely? I learned from the best, Damon replied. Your family spent years planning my destruction. I just compressed the timeline. Natalie turned finally, her perfect facade cracking. Without her usual immaculate makeup and styled hair, she looked younger, more vulnerable, almost like the woman he had believed he married. Was any of it real? Damon asked suddenly, surprising himself with the question. Any part of our marriage? Something flashed in Natalie's eyes. Regret, perhaps, or just another calculated performance. I don't know anymore. Maybe at the beginning, before I remembered why I was there. Damon nodded, accepting the closest thing to honesty she'd probably ever given him. What happens now? She asked, gesturing vaguely at the emptying house. Federal prison? Financial ruin? Complete humiliation? That depends on you, Damon said, taking a seat across from her. I came to offer you a choice. How generous, Natalie said bitterly. Well, my options. Prison or disgrace. Option 1. You cooperate fully with the federal investigation, testify against your father, Vincent, and Senator Foster. In exchange, you face reduced charges, probably probation, not prison time. And option 2, you leave the country tonight. There's a private plane waiting at the municipal airport. It will take you to a location of your choosing outside U.S. extradition treaties. You'll have access to a bank account with $5 million, enough to start over, live comfortably, but never return. Natalie studied him with newfound wariness. Why would you offer me that? Because prison will be too quick, too clean, Damon said honestly. This way, you live with what you've done, with what you've lost. You watch from a distance as your family name becomes synonymous with scandal and fraud. You exist in exile, always looking over your shoulder. A bitter laugh escaped her. So your mercy is actually a more refined cruelty. I learned that from you too. Natalie drained her glass. And if I choose exile, what's to stop me from telling the world about poor Douglas Reed and his first wife? About how he... Nothing, Damon interrupted. Tell whatever version of the story you want. I've already released Marianne's journal and recordings to select media outlets. The truth will stand on its own. Silence stretched between them. The weight of 7 years of marriage, built on lies, sustained by manipulation, collapsing into this final moment. The plane leaves at midnight, Damon said, standing. A driver will come for you at 11, if that's your choice. If not, federal agents will arrive at 9 tomorrow morning. As he reached the door, Natalie called after him. Did you ever really love me, Damon? Or was I just the convenient daughter-in-law for the great Douglas Reed? Damon paused, considering the question. I loved you completely. That was my mistake. One I won't repeat. He turned back to face her one last time. Goodbye, Natalie. Later that night, as Damon sat at his father's study at the lake house, his phone chimed with a message from an anonymous source, one of his private investigators. A single photo, Natalie boarding a private jet, a single suitcase in hand. She had chosen exile. Somehow, he'd known she would. The next morning, Damon met with Preston to finalize the acquisition of Keller Financial Group. The board had accepted his offer. As predicted, they had no choice. What will you do with it? Preston asked as they signed the final documents. Dismantle it, Damon replied. Sell off the profitable divisions, close the rest. The Keller name will be removed from everything. Preston hesitated. And Vincent? He surrendered to authorities this morning. He faces the consequences of his actions. No deals, no mercy. Damon signed the last document with a flourish. The same applies to Howard and anyone else involved. And Natalie? Preston asked carefully. There's no record of her leaving the country, but she's not at any family properties. Damon met his lawyer's questioning gaze calmly. I have no information about my estranged wife's whereabouts. I assume the authorities will locate her in due course. Preston nodded slowly, understanding the unspoken message. Some acts of retribution were best left undocumented. That afternoon, Damon called an emergency meeting of Reed Technologies' executive team. Despite the chaos of the past weeks, the company had remained stable, protected by Douglas Reed's foresight and Damon's swift action. My father built this company on integrity and innovation, Damon told the assembled executives. Recent events have tested both, but we've emerged stronger. He looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes. Now we rebuild and expand. Reed Technologies will acquire Keller Financial Group's assets, establish a new cybersecurity division, and pursue the government contracts that Senator Foster tried to divert elsewhere. Leo Dawson, sitting at Damon's right hand, nodded approvingly. What about the rumors about Natalie and the Kellers? The press is having a field day. Let them, Damon said dismissively. The truth is already public record. Howard Keller orchestrated a decades-long vendetta based on lies about my father. He used his daughter as a pawn in that game. Now, they're all paying the price for their actions. As the meeting concluded, Damon felt a strange sense of emptiness beneath his triumph. He had won completely, protected his father's legacy, secured his company, delivered retribution to those who had betrayed him. Yet victory tasted hollower than he had expected. That night, as he finally returned to his restored home, Damon stood before the mantle where his father's ashes rested. "It's done," he told the urn quietly. "All of it exactly as planned. You taught me well." In the silence that followed, Damon could almost hear his father's voice. In chess, the player who sees 3 moves ahead usually wins. See 10 moves ahead, and you'll never lose. Damon had seen the entire game, from opening to endgame. He had outmaneuvered his opponents at every turn. The Keller family was ruined. Natalie was exiled. His father's name was cleared. Reed Technologies was stronger than ever. Yet as he poured himself a glass of his father's favorite scotch, Damon wondered what the victory had cost him. Whether, in becoming the ruthless strategist needed to win this battle, he had lost something essential of himself. The thought was fleeting. By morning, it would be gone entirely, replaced by the cold certainty that had guided him through his campaign of retribution. Betrayal demanded consequences, delivered without mercy or hesitation. The game was over. Damon Reed had won. And if winning had changed him irrevocably, made him harder, colder, more calculating, that was simply the price of victory. Chapter 9. Ashes to Ashes. 1 year later, Damon Reed stood at the edge of the lake behind his father's house, now unquestionably his house, watching the setting sun paint the water in shades of amber and gold. In his hand, he held the urn containing Douglas Reed's ashes. "It's time," he said quietly. Behind him, Leo Dawson nodded solemnly. He would have wanted this place. The past year had transformed both men and Reed Technologies. With Howard Keller serving a 15-year sentence for fraud and conspiracy, Vincent Blackwell disbarred and awaiting trial, and Senator Foster cooperating with ongoing federal investigations, the Keller network of influence had been completely dismantled. Reed Technologies had not only survived, but thrived, absorbing the profitable portions of Keller Financial Group and expanding into new markets. Damon had emerged from the scandal not as a victim, but as a ruthless businessman with an unerring instinct for victory, a reputation that inspired both respect and fear. "Any word on Natalie?" Leo asked carefully as Damon prepared to scatter his father's ashes. "Nothing confirmed," Damon replied, his voice neutral. "Rumors place her in Singapore or possibly Dubai. The federal manhunt continues, officially. And unofficially?" A thin smile crossed Damon's face. "Unofficially, her exile continues exactly as designed. $5 million buys comfort, but not freedom. She lives in constant fear of extradition, never able to use her real name, never able to contact her family. A prison without walls," Leo observed. "More effective than any cell," Damon agreed. "She'll spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, wondering when her past will catch up to her." Leo studied his friend's profile, the harder angles of his face, the calculating coldness that now permanently resided behind his eyes. "Do you ever regret it? Not the revenge, but letting her escape?" Damon considered the question as he opened the urn. "No. Prison would have given her a clear ending, perhaps even redemption in time. This way, there's no closure, no redemption. Just the endless consequence of her choices." The ashes scattered across the water's surface, drifting in the gentle breeze. Douglas Reed's final return to the place he had loved most. "Thank you for everything, Leo," Damon said as they walked back toward the house. "Few people would have stood by me through all this." "That's what friends do," Leo replied, though something in his voice rang slightly false. Damon caught the note of insincerity, but said nothing. He had learned to watch and wait, to observe the subtle tells that betrayed hidden motives. And Leo had been showing many such tells lately. Later, after Leo had departed, Damon retreated to his study. The room preserved almost exactly as his father had kept it, save for the addition of a wall-mounted display case containing Mary Ann Keller's journal and recordings. A reminder of the lies that had nearly destroyed the Reed legacy and the truth that had saved it. His secure phone, the one whose number only 5 people in the world possessed, vibrated on the desk. The text was brief. Singapore confirmed. Surveillance established. Damon allowed himself a small smile. Natalie would never know she was being watched. Her every move documented, her false identity maintained only because he allowed it. The power to end her exile, to trigger her arrest and extradition, remained in his hands alone, a sword perpetually suspended above her head. The following morning, Damon arrived at Reed Technologies' headquarters for the quarterly board meeting. The company had just posted record profits, and the mood was celebratory. As the meeting progressed, financial projections were presented, new acquisitions discussed, strategic directions debated. Throughout it all, Damon observed the dynamics around the table with careful attention. Who aligned with whom? Who hesitated before speaking? Who avoided certain topics? When Leo presented the cybersecurity division's performance, Damon noticed his partner's slight nervousness, the carefully curated nature of the data presented. Impressive results, Damon commented when Leo finished, particularly the government contract retention rates. We've worked hard to rebuild those relationships after the Foster scandal, Leo replied, a bead of sweat forming at his temple despite the room's cool temperature. After the meeting, Damon invited Leo to join him for lunch in his private dining room adjacent to his office. As they settled in, Damon poured wine for both of them. To continued success, he toasted. Leo raised his glass. To the future of Reed Technologies. They ate in companionable silence for several minutes before Damon spoke. I received an interesting communication yesterday from Senator Foster's aide. Leo's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Oh, yes. Apparently, as part of his cooperation agreement, the senator is providing details about everyone he collaborated with over the years. Damon sipped his wine, including someone inside Reed Technologies who fed him proprietary information during the early stages of the Keller scheme. The color drained from Leo's face. Damon, don't, Damon interrupted, his voice soft but deadly. Don't insult me with denials or excuses. I've known for months, Leo. How? The same way I uncovered the Keller's plan. Patience, observation, the willingness to see people as they are, not as I wish them to be. Damon set down his glass carefully. You were careless with the financial transfers. Small amounts, well disguised, but still traceable if one knows where to look. Leo's shoulders slumped. It wasn't what you think. I never wanted to harm you or Douglas. They approached me 2 years ago. Financial trouble, gambling debts. They had evidence of tax irregularities from my past. I gave them information, but nothing critical, nothing that would destroy us completely. Damon finished for him. Just enough to weaken us, make us vulnerable for their larger attack. His expression remained calm, almost sympathetic. The question now is, what happens to you? Fear flickered across Leo's face. Are you turning me over to the FBI? That would be the logical move, Damon acknowledged. But we've been friends since childhood. That counts for something, even now. Hope cautiously entered Leo's eyes. Then, you have a choice, Damon said, echoing the words he had spoken to Natalie a year earlier. Option 1. Resign immediately, forfeit your shares in the company, and leave the country. A position has been arranged for you with our subsidiary in Malaysia. You'll be comfortable, but never permitted to return. Leo stared at him. And option 2. I turn over the evidence to the federal investigators tomorrow morning. You face charges of corporate espionage, conspiracy, wire fraud, similar to what Howard and Vincent are dealing with. The silence between them was heavy with decades of friendship, now balanced against betrayal. Why Malaysia? Leo finally asked, his voice hollow. Damon smiled thinly. I hear Singapore is just a short flight away. Perhaps you and Natalie can reminisce about old times. Leo's eyes widened with sudden understanding. You knew I was in contact with her. That's why you let her escape, why you've been tracking her. To see who she reached out to. Among other reasons, Damon confirmed. She was always the bait in a larger trap. First for the Kellers, now for you. When did you become so cold? Leo whispered. We were like brothers once. When I buried my father. When I learned my wife married me as part of a decades-long vendetta. When I discovered my closest friend was feeding information to my enemies. Damon's voice remained conversational, as if they were discussing the weather. Experience is an effective teacher, Leo. I've learned to see the world as it is, not as I wished it to be. By evening, Leo Dawson had resigned his position, citing personal reasons and health concerns. His shares in Reed Technologies were transferred to the company in exchange for a confidential settlement. His office was emptied, his access revoked, his very existence within the company erased as efficiently as if he had never been there. 2 days later, Damon received confirmation that Leo had arrived in Kuala Lumpur, taking up residence in the company apartment arranged for him. The final piece of his retribution was in place. Howard in prison, Vincent disgraced and awaiting trial, Olivia financially ruined, Natalie in permanent exile, Leo banished to the other side of the world, forever separated from the company he had helped build. All of them connected yet isolated, each a reminder to the others of the price of betrayal. 6 months later, Damon stood at the window of his father's lake house, now fully his home, watching a spring storm roll across the water. Reed Technologies had just completed its most successful quarter in company history. The Keller name had been erased from the financial world. Douglas Reed's reputation had been not just restored but elevated, his innovations celebrated, his legacy secured. Damon had won completely, irrevocably. He had avenged his father, protected their legacy, and delivered justice to everyone who had betrayed him. Yet as lightning flashed across the darkening sky, Damon recognized that his victory had transformed him. The man who had once loved Natalie without reservation, who had trusted Leo implicitly, who had believed in the essential goodness of people, that man was gone, replaced by someone harder, more calculating, incapable of forgiveness. He thought briefly of Natalie, living under a false identity in Singapore, and Leo, isolated in Malaysia, both of them forever looking over their shoulders. He thought of Howard, growing old in a federal prison, and Vincent, his legal career destroyed. He thought of Olivia, reduced to working in someone else's gallery after losing everything. They had tried to take everything from him when he was at his most vulnerable. In return, he had taken everything from them when they least expected it. As thunder rumbled across the lake, Damon raised his glass in a silent toast to his father's memory. Douglas had taught him to see 10 moves ahead, to anticipate every counter, to leave nothing to chance. The storm outside intensified, mirroring the one that had transformed Damon Reed from a trusting son and husband into the architect of a perfect revenge. That storm had passed, leaving behind a man who would never again be vulnerable to betrayal, because he would never again permit himself to trust completely. It was, Damon reflected as lightning illuminated the lake once more, a price he would willingly pay again. For in the ashes of betrayal, he had forged himself into something new, something untouchable. The house around him was quiet, empty save for memories and ghosts. But unlike the emptiness he had returned to after his father's funeral, this solitude was of his own making, his own choice. Damon Reed had lost a father, a wife, a friend, and perhaps some essential part of himself. But he had kept his promise. The house remained with a Reed. The legacy was preserved. The betrayers had paid their price. And in the final accounting, that was enough. And there you have it.